I don't fit the traditional stereotype of what people would consider a pro-lifer to be. I am an atheist. I'm a feminist. I'm a registered Democrat. So these things don't generally go together in the pro-life movement, but I'm here representing those people that make those identifications and are also pro-life. I was not raised pro-life. In my early 20s, I dated someone who was passionately pro-life, and I am a vegetarian. I have a strong sensitivity to animals, and he would try to play on that a little bit and say, how could you possibly care about the dolphins and you don't care about unborn human beings being killed in the womb? And I was just like, what unborn human beings? It's just a clump of cells. What are you talking about? And he really went out of his way to show me images and ultrasounds of preborn children in utero. He really made a case for me that they were, in fact, part of our human family, that a fetus, that an embryo, that they are of our species, that they are human beings. But I still maintained a pro-choice position for various other reasons. I thought there is a tremendous amount of injustice in the world. This is just one of those other terrible things, but on a scale of like absolutely horrible to just probably not that good. It's probably just not that good, and it's just not something that I'm willing to take a stand on. What really changed it for me was much later in life. I thought, all of these billions of years of evolution have occurred, and eventually somehow I've come into existence, and I have this conscious experience where I get to explore the universe in a way that's so rare. And I started thinking about what would justify robbing someone of that very small opportunity to experience that. People weren't caring about it and should be. And I just started having all of these feelings about it and started doing a lot more investigation into the pro-life position. Ultimately, I didn't really feel that there was a place for a pro-life atheist. But then I found secular pro-life. And that immediately struck a chord in me. I thought, this is me. I am a secular pro-lifer. The typical understanding of who's involved in the pro-life movement is very much dominated by our opposition. They want it to appear as if we are just a bunch of old white religious men. And what we find from Gallup polling is that the majority of people who actually identify as being pro-life are in fact women. And what we find in minority communities is that there's a higher percentage of Blacks and Hispanics that identify as pro-life. There are an estimated 6 million non-religious pro-lifers in the United States, according to Gallup polling. Probably most of those people who are non-religious but are also having pro-life views are probably not very vocal about it for the reasons that I wasn't. The stereotype isn't accurate. The pro-choice movement from the very beginning worked to discredit pro-life atheists, pro-life Protestants, pro-life Buddhists, anyone who didn't fit the stereotype that they were trying to project to the media, which was, this is an issue that's coming from the Catholic hierarchy. Most Catholics don't even want this type of abortion restriction. So I think that it is so important, and more important than ever, that we continuously work against fighting those stereotypes and elevate and magnify the voices within our pro-life community that aren't necessarily fitting that stereotype. Other human rights movements, like the civil rights movement. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, clearly a religious man, but the core message of their campaign was one of human rights. They would hold signs that said, "I am man," something that absolutely anyone could grasp onto and not feel that their personal religious opinions were being infringed upon in any way, that it was appealing to something deeper, something that we all share, a sense of empathy. What they're doing is they're telling people that basically, if you're against abortion, you're forcing your religion on other people. That is their strategy. But I think that it's really important to point out that it's actually the other way around. It is pro-lifers that want a separation of church and state. Pro-lifers want the law to reflect the scientific fact that life begins at fertilization, not just whenever we feel like life begins. In my experience, most people that I talk to about the pro-life position have never even heard a pro-life position before, other than what's portrayed by their own pro-choice sources. Absolutely any textbook on biology is going to define the fertilization of any mammal to be the beginning of that new mammal's existence. For the most part, if someone's challenging me on that, I like to just throw the challenge back at them and say, show me anywhere, any biology textbook that says anything other than that, and then we can talk about it. As an atheist, people ask me all the time, oh, how do you ground morality? Or, why would you care about something like this? I think it's pretty obvious that anybody living should want to live in a world where we're free from violence and we're free from being discriminated against. The methods for abortion are very violent. The way to abort a human being is to either poison or dismember it. And I think most people would agree that if those things were done to a born person, they would absolutely be considered violent acts. Abortion itself is an act of inequality. The preborn doesn't have an equal right to life under our law currently. Since Roe v. Wade was established, Roe v. Wade, the landmark case legalizing abortion in all 50 states, it has changed our moral landscape in the United States, and 56 million lives, roughly, have been lost to abortion since that day. If we're considering the preborn to be equal to born people, then that is clearly an act of discrimination. Ableism is the discrimination against someone based on ability. So if someone is not able to eat on their own, walk on their own, if someone is not able to speak or not able to experience consciousness, these are all ways that we could potentially be discriminating against people, both preborn and born, that is what we would consider ableist. How would you feel if maybe there was a born person who didn't have any limbs, or someone who was just less socially developed? This isn't consistent with how we would treat born people. Do we give people who are less able different rights than we give able-bodied born people? This is a perpetuation of a type of discrimination. When we are saying that abortion is a way for women to achieve equality, they are doing that literally on the backs of the preborn. All of our equality is tied to each other. None of us are free until all of us are free. None of us are equal until all of us are equal. So if we're saying we only care about born women's equality, but we don't care about preborn women's equality, that is an ableist characterization, and that is discrimination. A woman's body makes a baby sometimes, and we need a world that supports her. She is a mother, that she's not deciding whether or not she wants to be a mother. She already is one. And what she has to determine is whether or not she's going to terminate the life of her offspring. As an atheist, I think the most important things that we can do and say to further our pro-life agenda is to promote the ideals of equality, nonviolence, and non-discrimination. Those ideals are accessible to absolutely everyone. I think it's very unlikely that you would find someone who would disagree with those positions. And when we continuously fight for those things and we stand up for injustice in all aspects of politics or what's happening in your school, and we are also standing up against the injustice of abortion, people will see the consistency there, and they will begin to see the inconsistency in their own position and their failure to uphold those ideals of equality, nonviolence, and non-discrimination when it comes to the preborn.